Hello everyone, welcome to our daily devotion. Today is Thursday, June 4th, and our devotion text is out of Isaiah chapter 40, verses 27 through 31. We're going to discuss a topic today I think that everybody is relating to right about now, and that is fatigue or weariness, or even being burnt out. And so when we respond, I think a majority of us, how we respond to being burnt out or fatigued is we kind of check out. We kind of disengage with whatever. We see it with the quarantine, where many people are like getting rid of the mask, and I'm going out. I'm going to go do something. I can't be cooped up like this anymore. So we kind of check out and we kind of give up. For me, just personally, running the daycare over and over and over again every day, I have the ultimate respect for school teachers and daycare workers. I run an after-school program that's 3 hours a day. And it's pretty easy to come in and hang out with the kids, minister to them in those 3 hours. And so when you maximize that 7 more hours, 10 hours a day, I was experiencing burnout. And so towards the end, I was crawling to the finish line. But I was so excited and so thankful to get a chance to minister to some of our kids, but I won't lie to you. There was an experience of burnout. There was an experience of fatigue and weariness that weighed on me. And I think most of us can relate to that when we are asked to be challenged and go day in and day out. We wonder, where's my day off? Where's my rest? Where's my vacation? And oftentimes turning our minds to a more spiritual idea, when life doesn't always go our way, or when we have to keep that endurance, and life is full of ups and downs, even for a Christian, where we have highs and we have lows. We have times of spiritual fervency. We have times of spiritual kind of meh. That's a technical term, theological term, meh. We have times of feeling blah. And so we want to, in those moments, we kind of assume that God has grown far from us, instead of examining ourselves and saying we've grown far from God. And these verses kind of talk about how God never quits. God never slows down. He never grows tired, even though we do. And oftentimes when we do, we blame God, or we turn and say, what's wrong with God? When really we should be asking, what's wrong with us? What's wrong with our own hearts? Let's get into our verses. Isaiah chapter 40, verses 27 through 31, and then 3 quick teaching points, guys. Verse 27 says this: Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God? Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Some of my favorite verses, some verses that are near to my family, my extended family, they're mounting up like wings of eagles. But notice what happens in verse 27. Verse 27, God questions through the prophet Isaiah Israel and the house of Jacob, and so then we can then glean from it ourselves. Why do we say God has forgotten me? Why do we say God has disregarded my cause? Why do we say that my path or my life is hidden from the Lord? Oftentimes we do that. I've heard so many people I've prayed with say God's forgotten me, or God doesn't want anything to do with me, or I'm too far away from God to come back to Him. And that's a sign of checking out. And so in this time, the way we do it is that we find ourselves becoming fatigued by everything else going on. We're fatigued by the news. We're fatigued by the quarantine. We're fatigued by not getting to meet. And so we run and get every chance we can. And sometimes our spiritual life suffers because of that. We suffer our relationship with God. We say, well, I'm so burnt out, God. You got to give me a chance to go do something else. Instead of saying, I've got to check in. I've got to really drive myself and pull myself and desire to serve God right now. A lot of times we let the worldly distractions, kind of the flesh, get in the way. So the first teaching point I want to tell you is that don't check out. Number one, don't check out. it becomes really tempting to say, I need a break even from my spiritual life. I need to slow down. I need to, I need to do this fun thing, or I need to do this entertaining thing. And I'm there. I do it. I'm not there now, but I've been there. And it takes fervent prayer, a relationship with God, knowing that, number two, God is everlasting. So that's a relationship now. So what happens is we check out, and God does not, but we move farther away from God, but we always say it's God's fault, or God has forgotten me. We always assume that, or that God's not in my life right now. And that's an us problem. So we've checked out. And so number one, don't check out. Number two, know that God is everlasting. Know that God never checks out. The scripture here says that God never grows faint or weary or tired. His spirit is everlasting. So in devotions past, we've talked about God as sovereign. We've talked about God's wisdom. We've talked about God's knowledge. We've talked about God loving eternally. We've talked even about God being consistent. He always is consistent. But to bundle all that together, we have to understand God is everlasting, and that God is perfect, but He's perfect all the time, every time, forever. Always has been, always will be. And so that's what we have to understand about the God we put our faith into, is that though I may feel that I'm in a cold spot or a far gone spot, that is not God's will for me. God is everlasting, and God is desiring is that all people serve Him and love Him fervently. That we love Him with our the entirety of our being, our heart, our soul, and our strength, or our might. God is challenging us through that, the greatest commandment, that we should love Him in such a way that becomes a lifestyle, that becomes a way of life. Now, life is a long race, and so Hebrews chapter 12 tells us that we have been given such a great cloud of witnesses. Now we must run our race. And number three, teaching point today, is to run with endurance. To run with endurance, understanding that God, Jesus Christ, is the author. He is the beginner of our faith, but He's also the finisher of our faith. And so when we run with endurance, we understand that God strengthens us twofold. He strengthens us in the here and now. He gives us what we need for the day. He gives us a mind to love what He loves, and to hate what He hates, and to revile what He reviles, and to pursue the things He has placed virtue on. He gives a mind and a heart to do that. He picks up our spirits to do those things. But sometimes we have bad days, and that's when endurance is key, because we realize that God is not just the author and the beginner of our faith, but He is the finisher of our faith. And so that we pursue Him to the very end, knowing that our reward, our treasure, is Christ in heaven. One day we're all going to go into eternity and get to spend an eternity with He who loved us so much that He died for us. That, to me, needs to be our mindset as Christians when we say run with an endurance, because sometimes I do feel tired. Sometimes I do feel weak. Sometimes I do get distracted. But God has called me into a race of endurance, to trust Him every step of the way, understanding He gives me what I need. He gives me the strength to carry on. But ultimately, He gives me the goal of the finish line, which is eternity with Him. And that is a wonderful feeling to experience. There's a wonderful feeling to know that God has that waiting for us. And so, Christian, I challenge you today. Moms and dads and coworkers and those who are laid off right now, and those who are struggling through this time, those who are afraid to turn on the news because it's just depravity and sin everywhere we look. God is challenging you and me to run with endurance towards Him. And He is worth it. He is a worthy prize. He is the only worthy prize. So this is Brother Daniel with our daily devotion. I encourage you to read all of Isaiah chapter 40. I look forward to seeing you again Sunday. Tomorrow night, last devotion of our quarter, and then we'll begin a whole new topic on Monday. So until then, may God bless.